Columbus. What do you think of when you hear that name? Maybe it's the house that you live in. The school or the church that you attend. Stores where you shop. The restaurants where you eat. Or the recreation areas where you go with your friends. But have you ever thought of Columbus before you were a part of the city? Have you ever considered what life might have been like for those people who came before you? Have you ever wondered, for instance, what life was like in this area when your grandparents, your great-grandparents, and even your great-great-grandparents were experiencing the daily events of their own lives in their own time? From its creation as a planned city in 1828, Columbus has been a community filled with diversity. Men, women, and children from a wide variety of ethnic and socio-economic backgrounds always have been a part of the fabric of Columbus's multicultural tradition. Just as Columbus is a community rich in diversity, It is also a city steeped in tradition. From one generation to the next, residents of Columbus have inherited an appreciation for celebrating, even in small ways, the familiar rites of passage that guide us through our lives. Very young people, much like you, have been the fortunate inheritors of these traditions. And although they might have dressed differently in years past, children then, like children now, always represented the promise of things to come, as well as the hope of good and productive lives in their adult years. As diverse as the people themselves, houses in which Columbusites have lived since the city's earliest days provide an interesting perspective on life in Columbus as it has evolved over the decades. From the most primitive of log structures to the most elegant of antebellum mansions, to the simple bungalow, and everything in between, the houses that people in Columbus have called home are as colorful and as varied as paints on the artist's palette. Now that your generation knows a little bit about how Columbusites before you looked, lived, and dressed, you might want to know something about the way in which these people moved about, from one part of town to the other, or even from one state to the next. Don't forget, people in Columbus have not always had access to motorized vehicles, such as the automobile and the airplane. Yes, believe it or not, there was life in Columbus before our city streets became crowded with cars, trucks, and vans of every description. So what did those people who came before you do in order to get from one place to another? Like men, women, and children all around the country, early Columbusites relied to a great extent upon horsepower, that is, horsepower of the four-legged kind. And when they weren't relying on horses, or simply walking from one place to another, many people living in this area turned for transportation to boats and the watery highways of the Chattahoochee River. When travel across the state by train became a reality in the 1850s, it was truly the dawning of a new day for Columbusites traveling both long and short distances. Although horse-drawn vehicles were certainly not abandoned completely, the speed and the convenience of train travel became more and more attractive as the years passed. Finally, not long after the beginning of the 20th century, an invention boasting a steering wheel, 4 tires, 2 doors, and an engine would revolutionize travel patterns like nothing before, and like nothing since. The automobile, in all of its shapes and sizes, has remained as important to Columbusites as the very clothes on our backs. Indeed, What would we do without our automobiles? So where did these Columbusites go when they left home? As they walked down the unpaved streets, rode into town in their horse-drawn buggies, drifted down the Chattahoochee in riverboats, backed out of their driveways in Model Ts. Where did they go before there were such things as shopping malls, video stores, bowling alleys, pizza parlors, and movie theaters? Well, the adults then, like most adults that you know now, went to work during the week. Children who were fortunate enough to attend classes, during the academic year at least, went to school. When people weren't at work or at school, they enjoyed some of the leisure time activities that are still being enjoyed today. As you read Our Town, an introduction to the history of Columbus, Georgia, as you look more closely at the history of the city and study more carefully the lives of the people who once lived here, don't forget all of the things that you and those people then have in common. Like you and your families, the early settlers of Columbus were men, women, and children who witnessed not only the perpetual changing of the seasons, but also the sometimes subtle and sometimes revolutionary social and technological changes that have affected the lives of modern men and women forever. As you become familiar with the lives and accomplishments of earlier Columbusites, remember that you are a part of the life of the city in the same way that they were a part of the city in their own time. Remember that your place in the history of Columbus is a significant one in the constant evolution that makes this the vibrant community that it is. And remember that what you do with your lives can affect not only the people around you, but also the countless people in the generations that will follow. Columbus. What do you think of when you hear that name? Maybe it is the house that you live in, or the school that you attend. But as you continue to learn, Columbus ideally will become more and more a name that makes not only about your place in the present, but also about your place in relation to all that came before you and all that will follow. Once you understand the full meaning of your place, in your time, in your town, then you will begin to appreciate the great diversity in Columbus's fascinating past, and you will also come to realize the true importance of the role that you have to play in the exciting present and future of this town that we proudly call our town.